The ocean can be a lonely place. Imagine you are on a ship, sailing the vast Atlantic. The date is December 5, 1872. A thick fog hangs heavy in the air, cold and damp. Your ship, the Dei Gratia, moves slowly through the gray mist. Suddenly, another ship appears. It is a brigantine, a two-masted sailing vessel. But something is very wrong. The ship is moving strangely. It drifts without purpose, its sails torn and flapping in the wind. There is no one at the helm, no one is on the deck. It is a silent shape in the fog, a ship with no crew. The captain of the Dei Gratia, David Morehouse, watches it with a growing sense of unease. He knows this ship. Her name is the Mary Celeste. This was the beginning of one of the greatest maritime mysteries in history. The Mary Celeste was found floating aimlessly, halfway between the Azores Islands and the coast of Portugal. It was a puzzle that had no easy answers. Why would a perfectly good ship be abandoned by its entire crew in the middle of the ocean? The sea is full of dangers, but this was different. There were no signs of a struggle. There was no obvious reason for anyone to leave. The ship simply sailed on, a lonely ghost on the waves, carrying a secret that the ocean would keep for more than 100 years. The men from the Dei Gratia felt a deep chill as they prepared to board the empty vessel, a feeling that had little to do with the cold sea air. The sea often tells stories of storms and survival, but the story of the Mary Celeste was a story of silence. As the boarding party from the Dei Gratia rowed closer, the quiet was unnerving. The only sounds were the creak of their own oars and the sad flap of the Mary Celeste's damaged sails. They called out, but only the empty ocean answered. Stepping onto the deck was like stepping into a forgotten world. Everything was wet, not just from sea spray, but from rain and fog. The ship seemed to be waiting for its crew to return, but they never would. It was a vessel frozen in time, its final moments lost to the waves. The sight that greeted the sailors was both normal and deeply strange. The ship was not sinking. It was not burned. It was simply empty. The mystery was not what had happened to the ship, but what had happened to the people. Where did they go? And why did they leave their solid, seaworthy vessel to face the open ocean in a small boat? The men from the Dei Gratia could not know that they were now part of a legend. They were the first to ask the questions that people are still asking today. The Mary Celeste had a story to tell, but its pages were blank. The ship was a silent witness to a disappearance that would baffle the world for generations. A ship is more than just wood and sails, it is a home. The Mary Celeste was home to a small dedicated group of people. The captain was a man named Benjamin Spooner Briggs. He was a respected and experienced sailor. He was known to be fair and a good leader. Captain Briggs was not a man to panic. He was also a family man. On this journey, he brought his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia. They were sailing from New York City to Genoa, Italy. For the Briggs family, this was not just a job. It was an adventure. They were a happy family, looking forward to their voyage across the sea. They had no idea it would be their last. The crew was small, but they were all skilled seamen. There were 7 sailors in total, from Germany and Denmark. They had been chosen carefully for this important voyage. The ship was carrying a valuable cargo, 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol. This was a routine trip. The crew was professional, and the captain was one of the best. There was no reason to expect any trouble. The sailors knew the dangers of the sea, but they also knew their ship. They were prepared for bad weather and long weeks away from land. They were a team, led by a captain they trusted. They were ready for the journey ahead, a journey from which none of them would ever return. Before the voyage, Captain Briggs wrote letters to his family back home. He wrote about how beautiful the ship was. He had recently overseen work to make the cabin larger and more comfortable for his wife and daughter. He was proud of his ship and his life at sea. His wife Sarah was also a capable person. She had sailed with her husband before. She was not afraid of the ocean. Little Sophia was a happy child, and her presence would have brought joy to the long days at sea. They were not just a captain and his family. They were a symbol of hope and normalcy aboard the Mary Celeste. Their presence makes the ship's fate even more heartbreaking. Imagine them on the deck as they left New York Harbor on that November day. The city skyline shrinks behind them. The open ocean lies ahead. There is a sense of excitement and possibility in the air. Captain Briggs is in command. His family is by his side, and a good crew is ready to work. They are a small community, floating on the vast water. They have everything they need for the journey. They have food, water, and a sturdy ship. They have experience and skill. Nothing about this picture suggests a terrible end. They are simply people, doing their jobs and living their lives, unaware that they are sailing directly into a timeless mystery. When the sailors from the Dei Gratia boarded the Mary Celeste, they found a scene of eerie calm. The ship was in remarkably good condition. It was a sound ship, as their captain would later report. Yes, there was some water between the decks and in the hold, but not an alarming amount. The sails needed some work, but the ship was still very much seaworthy. Below deck, the mystery only deepened. In the crew's quarters, their belongings were still there. Clothes were packed away in sea chests. Their tobacco pipes were left behind. It was as if they had just stepped out for a moment and were expected back at any time. The captain's cabin was even more unsettling. Captain Briggs's things were all in order. His wife's sewing machine had a piece of sewing still waiting in it. Their daughter's toys were left on the bed. On a table, a meal seemed to have been left unfinished. The ship's galley, the kitchen, was stocked with food and water. There were enough provisions for 6 months. This was not a ship that had been abandoned because of starvation or thirst. The crew had everything they needed to survive. Why would 10 people leave a perfectly good ship with plenty of food and water to take their chances on the open ocean? It made no sense at all. One of the most important clues was the ship's single lifeboat. It was missing. The place where it was normally stored was empty. This suggested that the captain, his family, and the crew had all left the ship together, on purpose. But why? What could have terrified them so much that they chose a tiny, fragile lifeboat over their large, sturdy ship? There were no signs of violence. There were no bloodstains. The cargo of alcohol was mostly intact. The crew's money and valuables were untouched. This was not the work of pirates. Pirates would have taken the cargo and the crew's possessions. This was something else. The ship's logbook was found in the mate's cabin. The last entry was dated November 25th, 10 days before the ship was discovered. It recorded the ship's position as being near the Azores. The entry was routine. It mentioned no storm, no trouble, no panic. After that last entry, the story simply stops. The pages are blank. The ship had sailed on for 10 more days, covering hundreds of miles, with no one to guide it. The Mary Celeste was a ship without a soul, a floating tomb that held its secrets close. The men from the Dei Gratia could only stand on its silent deck and wonder at the impossible scene around them. To understand the mystery, we must look at the timeline. The Mary Celeste set sail from New York on November 7, 1872. Her destination was Genoa, Italy. The journey across the Atlantic should have taken a few weeks. For the first part of the voyage, everything seemed normal. We know from the ship's log that they had some rough weather, but honestly, this is normal for the North Atlantic in winter. Captain Briggs was an experienced mariner, and would have handled it with skill. The ship was strong and well prepared. No one on board would have been overly concerned. They were simply sailing, day by day, closer to their destination. The last entry in the ship's logbook was made on the morning of November 25th. At 8 a.m., the log recorded the ship's position. It was located just off the coast of Santa Maria Island in the Azores. The entry noted that the weather was unsettled but not dangerous. After this entry, the official record ends. There are no more words from Captain Briggs or his crew. However, on the ship's slate, a board used for temporary notes, another position was recorded for the following morning. This showed that the ship had sailed past the island. This was the last message of any kind from the people of the Mary Celeste. It was a simple navigational note, with no hint of the disaster to come. Just 10 days later, on December 5th, the Dei Gratia found the Mary Celeste drifting. She was over 400 nautical miles away from where she had been on November 25th. The ship had continued on her journey, guided only by the wind and currents. 10 days had passed. 10 days of silence. What happened during that time? The ship was found with its sails set in a way that suggested the crew had been trying to manage them in changing winds. But then, they were gone. The gap in time is a black hole in the story, a period where something so terrible happened that it forced 10 people to flee for their lives. The voyage of the Dei Gratia adds another layer to the timeline. Captain Morehouse of the Dei Gratia actually knew Captain Briggs. They had even had dinner together in New York before their ships departed. The Dei Gratia left New York a week after the Mary Celeste, but But it was a faster ship. It was pure chance that they were the ones to find the abandoned vessel. When they sailed the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar to claim a salvage reward, the mystery exploded onto the world stage. The timeline was clear: a normal departure, a routine log entry, and then silence. The final chapter of the Mary Celeste's voyage was never written by its crew. When a story has no clear answer, people begin to imagine one. The mystery of the Mary Celeste has produced many theories over the years. Some are logical, while others belong to the world of fiction. One of the first theories was pirates. Could pirates have attacked the ship, killed the crew, and thrown them overboard? This seems unlikely. The cargo was valuable, and it was almost completely untouched. The crew's personal belongings, including their money, were also left behind. Pirates are thieves. They would not have left such valuable items. There were also no signs of a fight. The pirate theory simply does not fit the evidence. Another popular idea is mutiny. Perhaps the crew rose up against Captain Briggs. Maybe there was a disagreement that turned violent. This also seems very improbable. Captain Briggs was known as a fair and good-tempered man. The crew was experienced and professional. Why would they kill their captain, his wife, and his young daughter, only to then abandon the ship in a small boat? If they had taken control of the ship, they would have sailed it to a port and sold the cargo. Abandoning the ship in a lifeboat would be a death sentence. There is no evidence to suggest a mutiny took place. What about a natural disaster? A giant wave, sometimes called a rogue wave, could have swept the deck, washing everyone overboard. Or perhaps a powerful waterspout, a tornado on the sea, struck the ship. This is possible, but it does not explain everything. The ship was not seriously damaged. A wave big enough to sweep 10 people off the deck would likely have caused more destruction. Also, the ship's lifeboat was gone. This shows that the crew left the ship on purpose. They were not washed away by a surprise wave. They made a choice to leave. The storm theory cannot explain the missing lifeboat. Of course, there are also the wilder theories. Some people have suggested that the crew was attacked by a giant squid or some other sea monster. In the 19th century, stories of sea serpents were common, but there is no physical evidence at all to support such a claim. No strange marks were found on the ship's hull. Others have even whispered about aliens from another world. These ideas are exciting, but they are stories, not scientific theories. They arise from our desire to fill the empty space of the mystery with something dramatic. The truth is likely far more mundane, and perhaps even more tragic. Of all the theories, one stands out as the most plausible. It does not involve pirates or sea monsters. It involves the ship's cargo industrial alcohol. The Mary Celeste was carrying 1,701 barrels of it. When the ship was inspected in Gibraltar, 9 of these barrels were found to be empty. These 9 barrels were made of a different type of wood from the others, a wood that was more porous. The theory goes like this: some of the alcohol leaked from these barrels and turned into a flammable vapor in the warm air of the ship's hold. The crew would have smelled the fumes and become worried about a possible explosion. Captain Briggs, a cautious man, may have feared that the ship was a ticking time bomb. He might have ordered everyone to temporarily abandon the ship as a precaution. His plan may have been to open the hatches to air out the hold. While they waited for the dangerous fumes to disappear, he would have moved his family and crew into the lifeboat. They would have tied the lifeboat to the Mary Celeste with a long rope. This explains why they left in an orderly way, taking the ship's chronometer and navigation documents with them but leaving their personal items. They did not plan to be gone for long. It was a safety measure, not a permanent abandonment. Then, disaster struck. Perhaps there was a small, harmless explosion of the fumes that made a loud noise and a flash of fire. This would have terrified the people in the lifeboat, making them think the whole ship was about to blow up. In their panic, they might have cut the rope connecting them to the Mary Celeste. Or perhaps the rope simply broke in the unsettled seas. Suddenly, they were adrift. Their small, open boat was separated from their large, safe ship. The Mary Celeste, empty but sound, would have slowly sailed away from them, carried by the wind. They would have watched it disappear over the horizon, their only hope of survival, sailing away forever. This theory fits most of the facts. It explains the missing lifeboat, the orderly condition of the ship, and the missing navigation equipment. It explains why a careful captain would abandon his vessel. The final act of this tragedy would have been played out in that small lifeboat. 10 people, including a small child, adrift on the vast Atlantic Ocean. They would have faced storms, starvation, and despair. Their final days are a sad story that we can only imagine. The ocean is very good at keeping secrets. It never gave up the lifeboat, and it never gave up the bodies of the 10 souls from the Mary Celeste. The ship sailed on, but its people were lost to the sea, leaving us with a haunting and eternal question: what do you believe happened?